Hey, we're living in exciting times for sampling. So one of the elements of hip hop production that I'm most passionate about is sampling. The reality about sampling in South Africa that it's always been mostly out of reach for most people. It's always been really expensive, and people couldn't get access to samplers. We started out sampling in 1990 when Michael Hatting got a Roland S50 sampling workstation. Must remember at the time, those things were so expensive that it was like second-hand car prices, and they were rare. So a few people would have them. Like people who were doing jingles, they could afford to buy it, or if you were by the means, you could buy the S50. Also, you must remember it wasn't easy to use. You really had to work at making an S50 work. That's probably why we got hold of it, because the guys who bought it, it was more work getting this the sampler, getting the song going, than the synthesizers that were out at the time. And Roland was the only brand that was in South Africa that had distribution of sampling technology. There was no Akai, there was no EMU. There's nothing more that I wanted over the years in an MPC or a EMU SP1200, but they were not available. I think it was only in like 2004 when Akai, in the distributors of Akai, brought in Akai samplers. I think it's the first Akai sampler that I saw in a shop at Paul Bothner's was a MBC XL 2000 XL, the blue one. That was the first time that the Akai agents actually brought that in. Before that, they were just like guys bringing one in from the UK or wherever they, so one or two guys would bring in, but there was no agency for it. So at one point, during the production of Prophets of the City, Age of Truth, there was a guy who was starting the EMU agency. I remember going to his house. We all went to his house in Constantia, and he had EMU ASR10 and a synthesizer and a couple of EMU effects units. That didn't really take off that much, as far as I know. But yeah, so in 91, 92, I think sometime around 1990, I got hold of my own S50. So Michael had an S50, and I had a Roland S50. I think it was the end of December 1990 or beginning of January 1991. That's when I got my first S50. I think it was 92 when we were in pre-production for Prophets of the City, Age of Truth. I then got hold of a Roland W30, which was the step up. I sold my Roland S50 to Reddy D, and then he used that for a while. Shaheen their studio had a S550, the rack mount sampler. Now, these things are not the easiest thing to program. You really got to work at it. And the reality was, yeah, there just wasn't a lot of them around, and they were really expensive and really hard to use. So there's one or two guys that bought it. I mean, people had to get a job. Like hip hop guys were out there. MC Def K had to go work, I think, to get W30. And then it took skill, knowledge, dedication, technical know-how. You couldn't just switch the machine on and then you up and running making beats. No, you had to go and search for sounds and make things happen. That was kind of tough. And through the years, even though software technology allowed sampling, I just couldn't myself get into it, because there was something about a sampler that made it does something to the sound that gives it a grit that computers just don't do. Computers are too perfect. So every sampler has its own character. So I went on for years. I used the W30 sampler, and if you like a few songs on the POC's Age of Truth, add that as a lot of drums, or the S50 sounds was on there. The songs that I did before that with Mike Hatting were mostly it was all S50. Things that I did with Mischief and Black Noise and all these other productions, right up to Claire Phillips' songs and lots of radio songs. I did it mostly with a W30 until I think the late 2000s, when I got this beast, Roland MV8000, which is probably the best sampler production machine ever made. I will stand by that. Just the sound of it, and the features, it's so advanced that people didn't even get into it because it could do so many things. Until today, it can do things that the new samplers cannot. Obviously, it's been overrun with technology now with the new Akai sampling. But the truth is, it's always just been an expensive thing to get into. I mean, this range, the SP series of samplers came in, and the whole lo-fi hip hop and the J Dilla Donuts, obviously everybody knows, the Madlib and MF Doom, the whole SP range created that whole vibe. But also, I mean, kind of, it's cheaper, but it's not exactly cheap. But this week, Roland's come out with a new mini sampler, the Roland P6, a compact from the era range. It's it's a mini sampler, so that seems to be something that I think will take off, and it's exciting times. I think it's in reach for most people to get that sampler. You're going to be able to do pretty much what you need to do to make hip hop and boom bap to trap to dance music to funk, whatever. That little sampler, I think, is gonna. It's exciting for me because more people will have access to it, and hopefully people will get into finding out what having a machine that has its own character and limitations, what that does to you when you're making a beat. It forces you to be creative, and it's the first time in all these years that, to me, that sampling will be in anybody's reach. I mean, I wish I could batch buy like 10, 15, 20 of these things and get it to a whole bunch of guys who's keen on sampling and start a wave of movement, like a scene on sampling. I've always wanted to do that. Get the whole vibe of working without a door. Yeah, I wish I could do that. If anybody wants to partner with me to make that happen, yeah, getting a whole bunch of guys involved in hardware sampling, I think it could be a fun thing to get young guys into, because there's no reason to get out of the computer when you got you can get stuff for free and download things, and yeah, but when you start working with hardware samplers, man, you will know what sampling really feels like. Yeah, just thought I'd let you know about that.